So, second half of chapter 4 is all about solving the quadratic equations. Okay, we'll go through lots of different techniques. The one technique that's probably going to be most familiar to you from Algebra 1 is factoring. So we just talked in Lesson 4.4 about factoring. Now in 4.5, we're going to solve by factoring. So, I don't know, do you guys remember zero product property?
No.
Here's what I'm going to say. You probably don't remember it by name, but when we start using it, I think it'll come back to you. So the idea of the zero product property, if two things multiply to equal 0, what do you know about one of them? One of them is 0. Okay, because if two things multiply to equal 0, we know one of them is 0. And so that's what this says. If A times B equals 0, then either A equals 0 or B equals 0. So, look at example 1. What are the solutions of the quadratic equation x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0? Well, notice, what's the name of the game today? It's solving by factoring. So, number 1 rule, is my equation equal to 0?
Yes. It says it right there.
Yeah, my equation's already equal to 0. Okay, so review. X squared minus 5x plus 6. How do we factor this? Does that sound familiar, guys? Product of the C term and a sum of the B term. For glare that's not usually there.
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
I'm wondering if it's just at the...
It's getting better.
If I move, that might make it worse or better. I don't know.
It's kind of worse.
Okay, so we want two numbers that give us a product of 6 and a sum of negative 5. What kind of numbers give me a product of 6?
2 plus 6 negative. Oh.
So if we just talk numbers, product of 6, 1 times 6 or 2 and 3. I do this reverse, I guess, because I don't talk about the signs till later necessarily. How is this going to work if it multiplies to be positive? What are the options? How do we multiply to be positive? It's either 2 positives or 2 negatives. What's it have to be in this case since it adds to be a negative? 2 negatives. Which set of numbers, if I make them both negative, will add to be negative 5? 2 plus 3 is 5, yes? Now, if I want them to subtract to be 5, then we could talk 1 and 6. But because we want them to add to be negative 5, negative 2 and 3. Okay. What do I do with those numbers? Put them in where?
You have to back 2 x's. Whatever it's called.
The 2 parentheses? X squared breaks up into x times x. One of them, they're both minuses, you guys decided. It was a minus 2 and a minus 3. Okay, we factored it. My equation's equal to 0. Do you remember how to solve this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, yep. Okay. First of all, we don't want to FOIL, because if we FOIL, we're just going back to where we just came from. Zero product property. If 2 pieces multiply to equal 0, then one of them must equal 0, which means set each piece equal to 0. Either x minus 2 equals 0 or x minus 3 equals 0. Solve each of those, which you guys already did. If it's x minus 2, you have to add 2. If it's x minus 3, you have to add 3. So we get solutions of X equals 2 or X equals 3. Is it okay to have two answers?
Yes.
No.
This was an x squared equation, right? This was x to the second. That means, generally speaking, there are usually two answers. Okay? Technically, there's always two answers, but I just can't guarantee they're always real answers. But generally speaking, for what we're doing, you will usually see two answers. Could I check these answers if I wanted to?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You could put 2 back in here. 2 squared is 4, minus 10, negative 6, plus 6, 0. You could put 3 in. 9 minus 15 plus 6. You see how I'm plugging those numbers back in? Okay, I'm not saying you have to do a check every time, but it's an option. Are we okay with that? Does that sound a little familiar from Algebra 1? I know, 2 whole years ago, but... What's different about this next one?
There's no C. It's just like equal to 12.
Okay. So I heard 2 different ways of explaining it. There's no C value, and it's not equal to 0. Let's take care of those things at the same time. Always start off by asking yourself, is my equation equal to 0? And if you're going to say no, we can't start this problem until we make it equal to 0. So what are we going to do? Okay. If it's negative 12, add 12. If you add 12 to the right, you add 12 to the left. So when we add 12 on the left, this becomes x squared minus 7x plus 12 equals 0. Similar to my process from last time.
Yeah.
I've got an equation equal to 0. Notice it's x squared plus bx plus c. So I need a product of 12 and a sum of negative 7. What kind of numbers give me a product of 12? 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. How do these signs need to happen here? Okay. Because it multiplies to be a positive and adds to be a negative, they're both negatives. Which pair works? 3 and 4, because negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12, and negative 3 plus negative 4 is negative 7. What do I do with that? 2 parentheses, right? X squared breaks into x times x. Numbers are minus 3, minus 4. Set them each equal to 0. X minus 3 equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. Okay. Answers are going to be x equals 3 and 4. What's my official step? If it says x minus 3, officially you should add 3. I know a lot of you guys just get to the point where you just, oh, it's the opposite sign and go for that. I get it, but realize that it's actually doing the solving. Okay. Okay, debating which way I want to go next. We'll go ahead and do the next one. Next one. First of all, does it equal 0? Does it equal 0?
You can't see it.
It's on your paper.
But like,
Just saying.
you're right. We're just saying too.
I get your point, though. Okay. Repeat. Does it equal 0?
Yes.
Okay, so to make this equal 0, I need to move that 12. It's a positive 12. So to get that 12 to become 0, I need to subtract 12. We subtract 12 on one side, subtract it on the other side. 1/2 x squared plus x minus 12 equals 0. Okay, it's equal 0 now. What else is different about this one? We have that lovely fraction, don't we? Do we have a technique? Do we have a good technique that allows us to factor with a fraction there? I mean, our factoring usually has to do with whole numbers, right? There's not usually fractions or decimals. Now, because this is an equation, we can get rid of that fraction. Yeah. The problem really, it's not really the numerator that's the problem, it's the fact that there's a denominator. How do you get rid of a denominator of 2? Multiply by 2, because denominator is dividing by 2, right? So if we want to get rid of that dividing by 2, the opposite of dividing by 2 is to multiply by 2. If I multiply that one piece by 2, I'm multiplying everything by 2. Everything on the left, everything on the right. So on the right, 2 times 1/2 x squared. Excuse me, this is the left. I think I said the wrong side. Okay. What's 2 times 1/2, or what's half of 2? 1, so that's just x squared. 2 times x, 2x. 2 times minus 12. Minus 24 equals 0 times 2 is 0. Is this something we can solve now?
Yeah.
Yeah, this fits the format of our others, doesn't it? Okay, gentlemen, focus, please. 2 parentheses. X squared breaks up into x and x. What product and sum do we want? Product of -4, sum of 2. What numbers you guys got? Combination of 6 and 4? Because 6 times 4 is 24, and 6 and 4 can subtract to be 2. How do I make the signs happen? If it multiplies to be negative, I need a positive and a negative. If it's adding to be 2, I always say larger number positive, so -4, +6. Which I think, if I recall, what do you guys put? Do you guys put the, trying to think how you guys have been taught. What do you guys do? You put the positive in the first, negative, you put the bigger one in the first? Is that what it is? So, and do I stop here? If we're solving equations, we don't stop here. What do? Set each part equal to 0. So x plus 6 equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. What are my solutions? -6 and 4. Because if it was x plus 6, you had to subtract 6. If it was x minus 4, you had to add 4.
Why'd you write that in the first problem?
Officially, it's 2 or 3. I mean, officially, these are answers. Or answers. As in, it could be this or it could be this. Okay? More often than not, though, I just write it with commas. They'll have it formatted how they want you to enter it. They'll either have two separate boxes or they'll say separate answers with a comma. Okay? Now, side note, before we go down to the bottom section, there's two other types, so to speak, that I don't have on here. So I'm going to kind of do a side note. This is just kind of an extra example that I want you to be prepared for.
What if I don't have space?
I say there's always the back side, or we probably won't get to problem 3 would be my, if I had to guess, we won't get to problem 3. If you don't have room over to the right, find a different place, put it on the back, put it at the bottom. Now, same rules. First of all, does my equation equal 0? Okay, by the way, everyone can see what I wrote? 6x squared plus 8x equals 0. Okay. So equation equals 0, yes? My job is to factor. It's all about factoring today. What's the factoring technique here? Yeah. I probably should have been asking you that all along. But the question you should be asking yourself, is there a GCF, greatest common factor? Because this isn't in our typical product and sum setup. There's no C term, so we can't think product and sum. What's the GCF between 6x squared and 8x? What was it? 2x? Does that make sense? 6 and 8 both divide by 2. And they both have an x in common. So I'm going to divide both of these pieces by 2x as I factor. Now, you don't have to write this divide by 2x part if you don't want it. That's just me showing what I'm doing. This is what you have to write. Is I'm going to factor out a GCF of 2x. So I put my 2x out front. And then what goes in my parentheses? What's 6x squared divided by 2x? 3x. Plus, what's 8x divided by 2x? 4. Okay, so GCF, that's a factoring technique you need to be aware of. It's factored. What do I do now? What's been my process in all my other problems? Once it's factored, we set each part equal to 0, yes? Do I have two parts here? Yeah. I have 2x times 3x plus 4 equals 0. The 2x isn't in parentheses, but it's still a factor that we can set equal to 0. So the pieces you're doing here, 2x equals 0, 3x plus 4 equals 0. How do I solve 2x equals 0? Divide by 2. If we divide by 2, what is 0 divided by 2? X equals 0. So there's one answer. If it's 3x plus 4 equals 0, how do I solve for x? Okay, subtract 4. So now I have 3x equals -4. Divide by 3. And what's my answer here? Yeah, -4 divided by 3 is -4 over 3, -4/3. So I have answers of 0 and -4/3. I showed that example for two reasons. One, GCF, right? I can't let you forget about that GCF factoring. And 2, you know what to do if it's 3x plus 4 equals 0, if there's two numbers in there. Okay, some of you guys can still do that in your head. For everyone else, let's show the step, right? So subtract the 4, divide by 3. Questions on that one? Okay. I have one more I want to show before I go to the bottom part. So see if you have another little room you can use here. In this example is x squared minus 25 equals 0. This is my last extra example. First of all, does my equation equal 0? Yes. Are there any GCFs? Other than 1? No. Okay, only GCF is 1. So nothing there is going to change anything. How do I factor this? What's he mean by square root?
25 is
Okay, 25 is a perfect square. X squared is a perfect square. Okay, we're setting up 2 parentheses. Hello? I do. He's on his way. Bye. Okay, so x squared minus 25, guys. Officially, if you look back at your notes for 4-4, the factoring is difference of squares. It does break into 2 parentheses still, using our perfect squares. X squared breaks into x and x. It's a square root. What's the square root of 25? 5. So that breaks into 5 times 5. How do you multiply to get a negative 25? Plus and minus. Does that sound familiar, guys? I said all along, you've got to know how to factor like that. It's easy if you can just remember. And what do I do to finish off this problem? Set each part equal to 0. So x plus 5 equals 0. X minus 5 equals 0. What are my solutions? Negative 5 and positive 5. No. It does not matter what order you give your answers in. Just like when we give the 2 factors, it doesn't matter which order you put your factors in. And Math Excel will be accepting, if I say negative 5 comma 5, you say 5 comma negative 5, Math Excel won't care.
What if it's like a positive 25 and they're both, and 5 is both positive 5s? Would it just be x equals 5? Or would you have to say x equals 5, comma 5?
You would just have, if you have 2 of the same answer, you would just have to list the answer once, I believe. And in fact, it might honestly count you wrong if you list the same answer twice. You know, I won't count you wrong,
That's going to trip me up.
but Math Excel could, you know.
Let's say equivalent to like that.
Sounds like Math Excel.
These big words like that.
Okay, now, example 2. Last type I want to show today. Same rules though. What's step 1? Does my equation equal 0? It does not. So how do you want to make this equal 0? Okay. If we keep everything on the left, are you guys talented enough? Can we move the 2 and the minus 2x at the same time? How do you move a minus 2x? You add 2x. And that means we're going to be adding 2x on the other side to the 30x. How do you move a positive 2? And if I subtract 2 on the right, subtract 2 from the 14 on the left?
Yes.
5x squared plus 32x plus 12
Equals 0.
equals 0. Okay. Does it equal 0? It does now. Next question, and I probably should have started with this from problem 1, but I didn't. Always ask yourself, is there a GCF? It's 5x squared. 5 doesn't go into everything else. Nothing else goes into 5, so, okay, no GCF. Do all of my terms have an x?
No.
If all of my terms did have an x, we would want to factor out GCF of x. This one does not. Okay, what's my plan? How do I factor this? Not exactly. Okay, he said, find something that multiplies to be 12 and adds to be 32. And I said, not exactly. Okay. And what is it? It's not multiply to be 12. It's going to be multiply to be 60.
Where did you get that from?
Okay, guys. We have an A term here. Okay. We have an A term here, which, sorry, Keaton, that's why your product of 12 got vetoed. Okay. That product of 12, sum of 32 would have worked great if this was just x squared. But we have to use, I call it product of AC. Ethan's right in that this relates to X method for Mrs. Rogers. Okay. If I say product of AC, that means I need a product of, in my case, what's A and C? 5 times 12, which is 60. So I need a product of 60 and a sum of 32. Okay, guys. What can we come up with here for product of 60, sum of 32?
Yeah.
Almost sounds too easy, doesn't it? Okay.
Too good to be true. Just sounds tricky.
No, it's 30 and 2.
Oh.
Now, if you didn't happen to come up with it that easily, can you go through and make your list?
I mean,
Yeah.
1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20. I mean, we can make our list. But if you find it, you don't have to make that list. Now, okay, what do I do with that 2 and 30?
You gotta
work out from
put
But we don't just go straight to the parentheses in this type.
alright, is it?
Split the middle term. Split the middle term. So we're going to split that 32x into 2x and 30x. You can either say 2x plus 30x or 30x plus 2x. It doesn't matter. Honestly, it kind of depends if you see some factoring ahead that you want to look at or anything. Is it okay if I say 30x plus 2x? What about your first and last terms? 5x squared carries down, and plus 12 carries down. And the equals 0 carries down. Okay. I got 4 terms here, guys. What do we do with the 4 terms?
Split them in half.
Split it in half. GCF of the first 2.
5x.
Okay. So 5x, and there'll always be an x in those first 2. I'm going to put my 5x out front. What remains in my parentheses? 5x squared divided by 5x leaves me with
X plus 6.
x plus 30x divided by 5x plus 6. Okay. GCF of the second half. What do 2x plus 12 have in common? A 2. So I'm going to put a plus 2 after those previous parentheses. 2x divided by 2. X plus 12 divided by 2. 6. We feel good about this because my x plus 6 is matched, right? If they didn't end up matching, I would not feel as good about this. Remember, your answer for factoring here is still 2 parentheses. What are my two parentheses? Okay. The GCFs of 5x plus 2 and my matching parentheses of x plus 6. Okay. On the quiz, that's as far as you'll have to go because you'll just be factoring, right?
Yeah.
But this is equal to 0 and we're solving an equation. So what do I do to finish this off? Yeah. Set both parts equal to 0. So 5x plus 2 equals 0 and x plus 6 equals 0. So if it's 5x plus 2, what happens? Subtract the 2. 5x equals 0 minus 2, which is negative 2. Divide by 5, and x is negative 2/5. On the other one, if it's x plus 6, what happened there? Subtract 6, and x is negative 6. Two answers? Negative 2/5 and negative 6. Okay, did product of AC come back to us?
Yeah.
Because that's something that's on the quiz, that's something that's on the review.
Well, you still have to solve it.
Right. Yeah. There would not have been all these equal zeros, and you would stop right there at 5x plus 2 and x plus 6 on the quiz, because you'll just be factoring.
No.
Okay?
I feel like the hardest part about all this is remembering how to do it.
You gotta know your techniques. Okay, I was hoping to get one more in. Where are we at on time? We can get one more in, I think. Okay. So next one. 4x squared minus 14x plus 7 equals 4 minus x. What can you tell me?
Add x over. Subtract 4.
Because first things first, I need this to equal 0. So to move the minus x, we'll add x. To move the positive 4, subtract 4. So what's my equation become?
4x squared
4x squared
minus 13x
and minus 14x plus x is minus 13x
plus 3.
plus 7 minus 4 plus 3 equals 0. He knows my next question. Is there a GCF? Nope. 13's prime, 3's prime, nothing else is going to go into those, so. Okay. What's my technique here? Yeah. I've got a number in front of the x squared, so I need a product of AC. That means in this case, I need a product of, what are my A and C? 4 times 3, a product of 12, and a sum of my B term, negative 13. What can multiply to be 12 and add to be negative 13?
Negative 12.
I at least know it's some combination of 1 and 12, right? Because multiplying to be 12 is 1 times 12, and 1 and 12 can add to be 13. If I needed to add to be negative 13, that means they both need to be negatives. And a negative times a negative is also a positive. So what do I do with my negative 1 and negative 12? Split your middle term. You guys have a preference of which way you want me to split this? Put the 12 on the left, so put the 12 first. Okay, so, of course, I'm going to split that to be minus 12x minus 1x. What happens with the 4x squared and the plus 3? They carry down. So I have 4x squared minus 12x minus 1x plus 3, and it equals 0. Once you get the 4 terms, what do we do? We can't do parentheses yet. Well,
You have to
I guess we are kind of doing parentheses here, aren't we?
middle of the GCF.
Yeah. Okay. Split it in half. I always split it after that second term. What's the GCF of the first two?
4.
They both have a 4 and an x. So 4x. What remains in parentheses then? 4x squared divided by 4x leaves me with x minus 12x divided by 4x, 3. Now, second half, minus 1x plus 3. What's my GCF of minus 1x plus 3?
1.
Need to use negative 1.
-1.
Okay? And it matters. Anytime, what I keep saying, anytime that first number is negative there in the second half, that usually means we have to use a negative. And that's what's going to work out best for my signs. So if I use negative 1, negative 1x divided by negative 1 becomes a positive x. 3 divided by negative 1 becomes minus 3. Did it work out so my parentheses match? It did, and that's what matters. Okay. What are my two parentheses then? Okay. GCFs of 4x minus 1, matching parentheses of x minus 3, and it's all equal to 0. How do I finish this off? Yeah, set each part equal to 0. So 4x minus 1 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0. If it's 4x minus 1, add 1. 4x equals 1. Divide by 4, and x is 1/4. If it's x minus 3, just add 3. X is 3. So 2 answers of 1/4 and 3. Okay, guys. Your homework in this lesson is lesson 4.5 in Math Excel. Please listen. It is available, although you will notice the due date is not till Thursday. So you do not have to worry about it till after the quiz if you don't want to. Okay? Your priority can be getting ready for the quiz. Quiz is on Wednesday. Bring the worksheet. A lot completed tomorrow. We'll go over worksheet questions, review material, quiz Wednesday.